I should have never gone down there. If you're listening to this, if you ever find yourself in a house like mine, please remember one thing. Never go to the basement. I moved into the house about 6 months ago. It wasn't anything special, an old 2-story brick place on the edge of town, the kind of home that feels forgotten by time. The rent was cheap, too cheap if I'm honest, and that should have been my first warning. The landlord was eager to get rid of it, almost desperate, but at the time I didn't question it. I was just grateful to find something I could afford. The house smelled of damp wood and dust the first day I stepped inside. The floorboards creaked under my weight, and the wallpaper had peeled away in several spots, revealing the cracked plaster underneath. But despite all that, it felt private, isolated. And after the chaos of the city, that isolation felt comforting. At first, it wasn't until my third night that I noticed the basement door. It was tucked away at the end of the narrow hallway behind the kitchen, a heavy wooden door with iron hinges that looked far older than the rest of the house. The handle was cold to the touch, even in the warmth of summer. I remember standing there in the dark hallway, staring at it, wondering why I hadn't noticed it before. Something about it didn't fit. The door looked older, heavier, almost as though it had been part of another building before it was fixed here. I tried the handle that night, out of curiosity, but it didn't move. Locked. I told myself it didn't matter. I had no need for a basement anyway. But still, the door stayed in my mind. The days turned into weeks, and I tried to settle into a routine. Work, sleep, repeat. But at night, I began to notice things. Small things at first, subtle creaks in the floorboards when I was sure I hadn't moved, a faint scratching sound that came from somewhere below the house. One night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps. Not above me, not outside, but beneath me. Slow, dragging steps, pacing back and forth under the floor. At first I told myself it must be the pipes. Old houses make noises like that. The rational explanation was easier to believe. But deep down, I knew pipes don't walk. Pipes don't drag themselves in circles beneath your bedroom. The next morning, I checked the basement door again, still locked. But when I pressed my ear against it, I swore I heard something faint. Breathing. By the end of the first month, I started to dream about the basement. In those dreams, I was standing at the top of the staircase, the air thick and damp, the single bulb above flickering with a sickly orange glow. The stairs stretched downward into blackness, and I could feel something watching me from the dark. Something with eyes. I always woke up before I reached the bottom. My sheets would be damp with sweat, my chest heaving, as though I had actually been down there. The dreams wouldn't stop. 2 weeks later, the key appeared. I found it sitting on the kitchen counter one morning, a small rusted key that hadn't been there the night before. At least, I swear it hadn't. I lived alone. I had locked every door and window. And yet there it was. I should have thrown it away. But I didn't. Instead, I kept it in my pocket. I told myself it was just a precaution, that I had no intention of using it. But some part of me, some curious, reckless part of me, wanted to know what was down there. The scratching grew louder at night, the footsteps more deliberate. Sometimes I heard whispers, faint and garbled, as though someone was trying to speak through the walls. I began to lose sleep. Every sound in the house made me flinch. Every shadow stretched too long, and always my eyes drifted back to the basement door. It was on the 37th night that I finally gave in. The air was colder than usual. The wind rattled against the windows, and I couldn't sleep. The noises beneath the floor were louder than ever. The dragging footsteps, the breathing, the soft hum of a voice I couldn't quite make out. I couldn't take it anymore. I got out of bed, barefoot, and padded down the hall. The house felt unnaturally silent, like it was holding its breath. When I reached the basement door, I pulled the key from my pocket. It felt heavy, far heavier than it should have, as though it didn't belong to this world. My hand trembled as I slid it into the lock. For a moment, I considered turning back, running upstairs, pretending the key had never appeared. But then, the lock clicked, and the door swung open. The smell hit me first, a wet, earthy stench, like soil mixed with rot. It burned the back of my throat and made my stomach twist. The air that poured from the basement was colder than the rest of the house, damp and heavy. The single bulb hanging above the stairs flickered on, as if it had been waiting for me. Its orange light illuminated the top few steps, but beyond that, the darkness swallowed everything. My chest tightened, my skin prickled, and yet, I stepped forward. The stairs groaned under my weight, each creak echoing too loudly in the confined space. The walls closed in, made of damp stone and tangled pipes that dripped water onto the steps. The smell grew worse with every step, thicker, almost tangible. Halfway down, I stopped, because I heard it, a low, guttural sound, breathing, deep and slow, coming from the bottom of the stairs. I froze, gripping the railing so tightly my knuckles ached. The light above flickered again, dimming for a moment before stabilizing, and that was when I saw it. Two small, glowing points in the darkness. Eyes. They were fixed on me, unblinking. I wanted to run, but my legs refused to move. My body felt paralyzed, as though those eyes had anchored me in place. Then, it stepped forward. A tall, skeletal figure emerged from the shadows, its body impossibly thin, its limbs long and uneven. The light barely touched it, but its skin looked dark, stretched too tightly over its bones. Its eyes were the only clear feature, round, luminous, almost inhuman. It didn't speak, it didn't make a sound, it just stood there, at the bottom of the stairs, waiting. My breath caught in my throat. The basement felt colder than death itself. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't dare blink. And that's when the bulb above me burst. The staircase was swallowed by blackness. I ran. I don't remember climbing the stairs. I don't remember slamming the basement door shut behind me. All I remember is the sound, the heavy, dragging steps coming after me. The sound of nails scratching against the wood as something pressed against the other side of the door. I locked it. I bolted it. I pressed my back against it until dawn came. But even as the morning light seeped through the windows, I could still hear it, breathing, waiting, and I know it's still down there. I didn't sleep for days after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those glowing orbs staring at me from the bottom of the staircase. The memory replayed on a loop, the way it stepped forward, the moment the bulb shattered, the sound of it dragging itself closer. At first, I thought maybe I had imagined it. Lack of sleep, stress. The mind can do terrible things when it's tired. That's what I told myself, over and over. But deep down, I knew. I hadn't imagined those eyes. The basement door was still locked, but the sounds hadn't stopped. If anything, they were louder now. At night, the scratching was sharper, like claws digging into the wood. Sometimes, the whole door would rattle in its frame, as if something was pressing against it from the other side. I stopped using the hallway. I couldn't bear to pass it. I started sleeping in the living room, the TV on for background noise, trying to convince myself I was safe upstairs. But no matter where I went in that house, I could hear it. The breathing, the scraping, the faint whispering that seemed to crawl through the walls. And the dreams. God, the dreams got worse. This time, I didn't wake up at the top of the stairs. No, now I was inside the basement. In those dreams, I was surrounded by damp stone, the walls slick with something dark. The light bulb above barely glowed, casting just enough illumination for me to see the figure. It stood in the far corner, its body bent at unnatural angles, its arms too long, its head tilted slowly, as though it was studying me, learning me, and then it would move. Not walk, not step, but glide forward, closer and closer, until its eyes consumed my vision. That's when I always woke up, choking on the taste of dirt in my mouth. One night, I woke to a sound that froze my blood. The basement door was open. I don't know how I knew. I didn't hear it creak, I didn't see it move. But I felt it, like a shift in the air, like something had finally been released. My stomach dropped, and a cold sweat broke out across my skin. I forced myself to get up, my legs trembling under me, and crept toward the kitchen. The hallway stretched out before me, darker than I'd ever seen it. At the far end, the basement door was wide open. The key, I had left it on the counter, but now it was gone. I couldn't move, I couldn't scream. I just stood there, staring into that open void, waiting for something to emerge. And then, the light above the stairs flickered on by itself. The staircase was empty, no movement, no figure, just that endless descent into black. My heart hammered in my chest. I slammed the door shut, locked it, shoved a chair under the handle, and stumbled back into the living room, gasping for air. That was when I realized something even worse. I could hear it, not from the basement anymore, but inside the walls. From that night on, everything changed. The noises followed me everywhere. In the kitchen, I heard scratching behind the cabinets. In the bedroom, I heard faint tapping beneath the floorboards. Sometimes I would wake to find the pictures on my walls tilted, as though something had brushed against them in the night. The smell, too, that same stench of damp soil and rot. It clung to my clothes, filled my lungs, seeped into my skin. No matter how much I cleaned, no matter how many candles I lit, it never went away. I stopped going to work, stopped answering my phone. The outside world felt unreal, distant, irrelevant. All that mattered was the thing in my house, the thing that wanted me closer to the basement. I don't know how to explain it, but I could feel it calling me. Not with words, with hunger, with patience. Every time I passed the hallway, I felt the pull, like invisible hands were dragging me toward the door, and part of me wanted to go. The worst night came 2 weeks later. I woke to the sound of breathing, but it wasn't muffled through walls or floorboards. It was right beside me. I turned my head, heart in my throat, and in the darkness, I saw them. 2 glowing eyes, hovering just inches from my face. I didn't think, I just screamed. The figure vanished in an instant, dissolving into the shadows, but the sound of footsteps thundered through the house, up the stairs, down the hall, circling me like a predator. I bolted from the bed, nearly tripping over myself, and ran for the front door. But when I yanked it open, the air outside was wrong. The street wasn't there. No houses, no sky, just blackness stretching endlessly in every direction. I slammed the door shut, chest heaving, my mind breaking under the weight of it. My house wasn't part of the world anymore. It was something else, a trap, a cage, and the basement was its heart. I don't remember falling to the floor, but I must have. I woke the next morning curled on the living room rug, my body aching as though I'd been dragged. The basement door was open again. The chair I had wedged under the handle was broken in half, splintered like kindling. The whispers were louder now. I could almost make out words. They came in fragments, echoing through the house, repeating over and over in voices that weren't mine. Come down. Almost time. Waiting. I know what it wants. I know where this is leading. It's only a matter of time before I go back down those stairs. I didn't fight it anymore. For days, I tried to resist, but the pull was too strong. The house had become a prison. The air was heavy with that stench. The whispers never ceased, and every shadow seemed to bend toward the basement. I stopped eating. I stopped drinking. Nothing mattered but the door, and the thing knew it. Every night, I felt it standing closer. No longer confined to the basement, no longer hidden in the walls. It hovered at the edge of my vision, a silhouette that dissolved the moment I turned my head. But I could feel it, always there, breathing just behind me. On the last night, I woke to find the basement door wide open again. But this time, I didn't close it. I don't even remember standing up. One moment, I was lying on the couch, shivering under a thin blanket. The next, I was at the top of the stairs, staring down into the yawning black. The bulb flickered to life above the steps, weak and sputtering, casting long shadows along the stone walls. The air was so damp it clung to my skin, heavy and suffocating. And I heard it, the voice, not whispers anymore, not fragments, but clear, deliberate words. Come down. The sound wasn't like a normal voice. It was inside me, vibrating through my chest, scraping along my bones. My hand tightened on the railing, but my legs moved on their own, one step, then another, carrying me deeper into the dark. The descent felt endless. My bare feet slid on the wet stone, the light above dimming with every step. Shadows twisted along the walls, writhing shapes that shouldn't have been there. The stench grew unbearable, like a tomb pried open after centuries. And then, I reached the bottom. The room was larger than I remembered from my dreams, a cavernous space carved out of stone. Water dripped from the ceiling in steady rhythms, echoing into the blackness. The walls pulsed with moisture, almost alive, and the floor was covered in thick, dark soil. At the far end stood the figure. It was taller now, impossibly tall, its head brushing the beams overhead. Its body was grotesquely thin, its limbs too long, bent at angles that made my stomach lurch. But the eyes, those glowing eyes cut through the dark like twin blades, unblinking, endless. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My entire body trembled, but I was locked in place, like prey caught in the sight of a predator. Then it spoke again. You opened the door. The sound reverberated through me, and I tasted iron in my mouth. My nose began to bleed. I shook my head, muttering, "No, no," but the word felt meaningless. The figure leaned forward, its bones cracking like breaking branches, and began to crawl toward me. Each movement was deliberate, slow, its long arms dragging against the ground with a scraping sound that made my teeth ache. I stumbled back, my foot sinking into the damp soil, and felt something beneath the surface. Something soft, something that shifted under my weight. I looked down. The floor was littered with bones, human bones, half buried in the earth, their empty sockets staring up at me. My stomach heaved, my knees buckled, and in that moment I knew I wasn't the first. I tried to run. I turned toward the stairs, but the steps were gone. The wall was solid stone, unbroken, trapping me inside the pit. My heart pounded as I clawed at it, tearing my fingernails bloody against the cold surface. Behind me, the figure was closer now, its eyes blazing brighter, its breath filling the room with a sickening wet rasp. I pressed myself against the wall, whimpering like a child. My body shook so violently I thought my bones would snap. It reached me, its hand, long, skeletal, with fingers like talons pressed against my chest. The touch was ice, burning through my skin. My vision blurred, my lungs seized, and for a moment I thought my heart had stopped entirely. The creature leaned close. Its face, or what should have been a face, was a void, a hollow absence with only those eyes burning in the dark. And it whispered, softer this time. "Now you stay." Pain ripped through me, sharp and consuming. My body convulsed as though something was burrowing under my skin, crawling into my veins. My scream echoed through the basement, but the stone swallowed the sound, smothering it until it was nothing. I fell to the ground, writhing in the soil, surrounded by the remains of those who had come before. Their bones rattled as if they recognized me, as if they welcomed me into their ranks. Above, the light bulb shattered, plunging everything into pure darkness. But I could still see the eyes, always the eyes. I don't know how much time has passed since then. Hours, days, maybe longer. The concept of time doesn't matter anymore. The house feels different now, larger. The walls breathe, the floor pulses, and I am part of it. I can feel the soil in my lungs, the whispers in my head. I can hear the screams of the others, buried beneath me, their voices woven into the endless chorus. The thing doesn't need to chase me anymore. I'm not its prey. I'm its prisoner. No, worse, I'm becoming like it. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I feel my bones stretching, my limbs pulling too long. My skin is tighter every day, my vision sharper in the dark. And the hunger, God, the hunger is unbearable. I know what it's waiting for. I know why it keeps me alive. Because sooner or later, someone else will move into this house. Someone else will hear the scratching, the whispers, the breathing at night. And when they finally open the basement door, I'll be the one waiting in the dark.
Subscribe to Horror Storybook.